I go zoom, 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 zoom.
Women lead with power and lead with confidence and lead with influence. Quite frankly, our leadership is the future.
The cardiology community hasn't been very friendly for women.
Telling their stories and giving everyone hope is what I'm here to do.
There aren't many Black gay women in the sports business world.
Bow down, call me your majesty. I go zoom, 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 zoom. Call me your
Let
majesty.
me learn from what happened and the mistakes I made.
The needs of women have been under-recognised. Women's health matters.
I was the youngest person there. I started live streaming on Twitch.
Wherever I am in my journey, it is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
These women are changing the world.
World Women Hour.
Power of Inclusion and Equality Moonshot, and super excited to introduce Adrienne Smith, who's the Senior Vice President, Senior Partner, and Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer, Fleischman Hillard, who's going to be moderating our panel, who will introduce our really outstanding panelists. So I'm handing it over to Adrienne.
Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the 3 o'clock most exciting panel. Maybe it's 3:10, 3:15, but we have so much amazing information to share with you today. Special shout out to Rupa for pulling this equality moonshot together. I love you more. So we are excited to be here. We're going to talk about inclusion, and I want to introduce the panels, but I think we'll all sit down. We'll have a seat, because this is a conversation of, I'd like to say, my best girlfriends, because they're all amazing women doing amazing things, and we all believe in the same thing, which is inclusion, equality, equity, all those things that keeps this human connection together. And these are, if there were any experts to do it, these are the women that are experts to do it. So I'll start again. My name is Adrienne C. Smith. My pronouns are she and her. I am a cisgender woman. For those who are visually impaired and watching, I am wearing a fire red dress with black boots and, shiny necklace and earrings, and I have like a little bob haircut. I'm a brown-skinned woman, so that's who I am. I am excited to introduce my panelists. Oh, I forgot to talk about what I do for a living. I think that's important. I am the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Fleischman Hillard. I love that space, amazing place, plug for Fleischman Hillard. I am also, my passion project is am the founder of the CAN, C-A-N-N-E-S, CAN Diversity Collective, where we create opportunities and access for people of color and underrepresented communities to come to the largest creative festival in the world in Cannes, France in June. So if you're coming to Cannes this summer, June 19th through the 23rd, please come to the CAN Diversity Collective's Inkwell Beach, where all of our voices are heard and important, and we elevate the conversation of DE&I. So super excited about that. So I am super excited to introduce the panelists, and we are in no particular order, but Allison is on my right, and Allison is the CEO of Comic Relief. Chandray, who is 2 seats over from me, is the executive director in equity, diversity, and inclusion and belonging at McKinney, which is an ad agency. We also have Claudia Romo Edelman. This is in alphabetical order, so there is an order to it. Claudia is the founder and executive chairwoman, or do you say chairwoman or chairman? Chairwoman of We Are All Human, whatever it is. Yes. Gina Badenoch. Did I say that correctly? Gina is a storyteller, young global leader. She's a speaker for TEDx and WEF, right? Which is the World Economic Forum for the people watching who don't know the acronym that we're using today. And we have Megan Cunningham. Megan is also a board member, an advisory board member of the Can Diversity Collective, so I'm super excited to have her here. Megan is the founder and CEO of Magnet Media, so we're super excited to have Megan. And last but not least, my Spelman sister, and if you guys don't know about Spelman, it is a African-American, a black female college, an HBCU in Atlanta, Georgia. And, we run the world. I just have to say that about Spelman women. She is the global chief marketing officer of Logitech, and she has been in Switzerland for how many years now? For 5 years. So we are doing amazing things, those Spelman women. Just another plug for Spelman. Okay, so we are here to talk about inclusion. We are here to talk about the impact inclusion at this equity moonshot during this conversation. It's an interesting thing about inclusion. We are in Davos at the World Economic Forum, which, people think is pretty exclusive. Have you found this experience as an exclusive or inclusive space? And I know, Claudia, you've been here for how many years? And we may need other mics. I see there's one here. I'm going to pass you this one.
First of all, it's great to be here. And I love the color, which is very different to other sessions where we are bringing it on. But this is my Davos number 26. I've been coming here for 26 years. I find this platform really useful for all the jobs that I've done, always doing marketing for humanitarian causes. And pretty much, Davos has looked the same for so many years, where there is pretty much the same face with the same suit and even the same ties and the same conversations. And it is a little bit like a postcard that changes, through the sessions and they post on the mic. But in reality is that this is exciting. It took me even 5 years ago, it was the first time where I started looking at wait, I'm a Latina, but there's no Latinas like me. There's no Latinos in session. There's no Latino conversation, and we're bringing 12% of the gross domestic product to America, and we're the future, and we're invisible. And nevertheless, at the end of the day, I think that all I'm saying is it took me 20 years to wake up to understand that I was excluded, that I was the only one, that was representing my group. I just melded in because it was easier for me to, get along. And I was pretty much probably looking like a guy with a suit and, I'm like this, but probably for everyone else. So it takes a while to be awake and be woke about your own, exclusion. And it takes all of us to be able to transform that waking up moment into an activist moment, into a moment of opening the doors for each other. But let me tell you what, all the CEOs and all the 2,000 members inside of the World Economic Forum, they got the memo. Diversity and inclusion is here to stay. And they have to take action. And the conversations are growing. And there's more and more of us. And there's every time more women in these rooms. I've been actually talking in rooms where sustainability was, in the little corner and no one came and there was only the three of us. And now it's big and it's central. The same thing will happen with diversity and inclusion. So the only thing I have to say, if the last 26 years have been, have been in their same trajectory. We're in a good trajectory. We just have to step it up and turn on the volume so that next year this room is 3 times the size.
I love it. And to Claudia's point, this year on the main schedule I counted, there were maybe 15 conversations around DE&I. So I think that may be a significant change. Any other people who, I know out of the 26 years, if we're counting numbers, this is my first year. So I have a little to say, but probably not as impactful as it relates to that. Anybody else who's been here for over 10 years, 5 years, 4 years. So we'll let it end at that. All right, 2 years, right? Any changes you've seen, Allison, in your last 2 years? And then you want to go?
Okay. I can't say I've seen changes in the last few. My first one was May. Okay. And coming in and just sort of assessing. And
that was a weather change.
Yeah, that was a weather change. I got some new shoes for this trip. But what was really interesting is landing here and sort of assessing and getting a feel of the vibe, and then all of a sudden seeing what I would call as clusters of folks who are trying to build conversation and communication around diversity and inclusion by default. So the FQ Lounge, and thinking about people, what's been happening in the LGBTQ plus community as well, that happened just in Accenture last night, which was believable and unbelievable to think that was the first representation on the promenade. Yes, the rainbow. So I mean, all of a sudden we come to this amazing event, and I'm learning as I'm here today, or for the last 2 years, and this is the first time that there's been any sort of presence of LGBTQI on the promenade, with all other kinds of representative storefronts lighting up the rainbows across the promenade. And you saw this visual representation of solidarity and support, and that was amazing. And so to your point, coming back and reflecting, I'm like, this is where I would call it almost like a mini punk movement. That the folks that are, maybe there's people behind the wall, perhaps in other meetings, that are not quite so diverse, and yet in order to set out a diverse agenda and a conversation and including a wider set of people, creating their own experiences up and down the promenade and inviting people in without a badge, without a registration, without and having that experience. And that to me was material.
I love that you said that, because I believe there's this subset of people, the 2,600 in that room, but then there's a whole group of people with diverse interests and passions. And I call them, we're on the fringe, right?
Yes.
The fringe events, in my mind, have the power. It's all about the fringe events and the conversations that we have to strengthen the work that we do, because I think this is where the real change happens, is on the fringe. I know you wanted to say something, Gina.
Thank you very much. Just to complement, I've been here 5 years, and I definitely do see that diversity has become much more visible, but also relevant to the conversation. We're seeing that more and more the leaders are understanding that this is a matter that they need to get on board, that is no longer an HR conversation, is a business decision that needs to take place now. And I think that's what's different. They're much more curious. A lot of them maybe don't really understand how and where to go. But they're seeing also a connection with the ESG conversation, and they're trying to find their way through that. So yeah, it is definitely encouraging to see the difference.
We'll have to put a pin in that ESG conversation, have emotions about that, because ESG, if we talk about environment, sustainability, and governance, sometimes when we're having those conversations in organizations, it pushes the conversation of DEI and it makes it other almost, because of the way we connect to that human connection and the human work that DEI does. ESG seems like it's more comfortable. But I think that's another conversation for another panel, so I'll go back to what we're talking about of inclusion. So many of us have been excluded in these roles, but has that empowered you? Like, what has that spirit of an exclusion, how's it informed or motivated you in the work that you do? Najo hasn't spoken. I'm going to pass the mic to you.
I can say that being excluded has created deep empathy, right? I mean, you have to look at what is the opportunity coming out of any adversity. And I am definitely one of those people that believes when there's a breakdown in something, there's an opportunity for a breakthrough. And exclusion is no different. And so I find, at least within my work and in my life, being excluded has helped me always have the empathy to look through the world through someone else's eyes. Because I surely for many years wish someone had the audacity to look through mine. And so it's taught me to always be human-centric in what I do, to be able to understand there's always different perspectives. I happen to work for Logitech, which is a design-led company, tech company, makes mice, keyboards, and webcams and video conferencing. And one of the things that even within the workspace we find is thinking about how people are working today, right? You could just look at it and say, there's video conferencing and webcams, or you could look at that and say, it's an opportunity for equity. Yeah. Because I've been excluded. I've not had a seat at the table. I've been not in the, let's call it the good old boys club. And to see now that with an opportunity for all of us working from anywhere is an opportunity for all of us to have a seat at the table for the first time. You're an equal square, as an example. And technology is an area and a space that can create more equity in how you work, how you create, how you play. And it's an honor to work with a company that believes in diversity, equity, inclusion, and takes that to the next level in creating technology that allows more equity in what we do and how we do it. So it's a privilege to take an adversity and make it into something that can be an advantage.
I love it. Anyone else? You have the mic, Chandra, so I'm figuring it's you.
Yeah. So when I think about that question in terms of how exclusion has informed and motivated me, I have to say, to be honest, when I think about the exclusion, initially when I'm excluded, it leads to and feeds self-doubt, right? You wonder, why am I being excluded? Is there reason for it? Now, fortunately for me, I am loved, and love assures me and ensures that I must be consistent and responsive to the call that is on my life. To be an advocate for others, and to really, this is the week where in the U.S. We celebrate the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so I have to say, one of the things that I think about as I act to honor his legacy is seeing myself as a drum major for justice. So DEI work is certainly important, and we know that there's a journey, right? DEI occurs on a spectrum. Over here on the justice side, we're trying to bring folks along. We really have to be true to the game and motivated by the belief that humanity, when it can express itself in its highest, best form, will value all of us. And equity will just be a part of the reality, not because it's the best business decision, but because it's the best human decision.
I love that. Megan.
I just want to really amplify what you just said because that was so beautifully put. As somebody who tells stories that matter so that we live in a more just and empathetic and transparent world, that is our mission at Magnet, I will say that when we started 23 years ago, shortly after Claudia started coming to Davos, amazing, you're my queen, the mission that we served, which was in service of many of the world's largest financial services and tech brands, which is our mandate, was really off to the side. And you and I have talked about this. Corporate social responsibility, corporate philanthropy, it's like the nice to have, keep people, worker bees, keep working, because that's a nice, you get a volunteer day, you get to feel good about what we do here, and even though we're ruining the world, even though we're excluding people, we have this, volunteer program over here. We're gonna give a teeny tiny percentage of our profits to some philanthropy effort. And it really was excluded, as you're referring to here, and the flip side of the coin. And then business was business, right? And now through a number of historical events that did take place over the last 10 years, I think there was a call to action, a mandate, and I had the great privilege of being with Sarah Kay Ellis, who runs GLAAD, who was talking about the incredible rainbow moment on the promenade last night. I had lunch with her yesterday, and she was speaking about how they showed up, the LGBTQ community, 1 year at Davos, not waiting for an invitation. And they banged the pans, and they made the noise, and they were an irritant. They were not welcome here. And over that evolution, it was very difficult. As change starts sometimes, it's extremely difficult. And she was courageous, and so was her team. And I think that a lot of the people here, Adrian included, really showed up at Cannes, not because there was a huge room waiting for you, not because someone was offering to give you a first-class ticket, right? They were not.
They were not.
But you showed up. And I think that to me is where it all begins. And I think just a quick story about that on our front. I'm really, really gratified to see that shift. It is not happening fast enough, but with corporate budgets now being much more integrated into DE&I and purpose-driven and mission-driven story, there's never a conversation that we are having about go-to-market strategy, about product launches that doesn't include some conversation around inclusion. Now, it's not the central conversation. It's not where it starts. It certainly doesn't have the budget that I believe it deserves, and really from a commercial perspective, not because you have to make the business case, because there's this underserved community that we also have to address, but it's not an and also. It is the community. We are living in a world that is going to become majority minority. That is, look at the figures globally right now. That's who's earning power, and that is who the next consumer base is. So it shouldn't have to be justified. It's been justified. It's a question of the leadership coming along.
Yeah, I was going to say she sparked something in me that made me forget my script and go to you because, there is this buying power. There is, the 86% of the Hispanic community are women who are earning the money in the household. How is that sort of transforming the way, if you've got all of this spending power, how is this shifting the narrative for advocating for more people of power and leadership position from the community?
And just on the excluded, on the exclusion side, I think that's very often we just get upset and we're in the problems business and we have to move into the solutions business. And I do think that I've seen here, for example, this is the third time. We were not at the table. We're not, we're not at the table. So we brought our own table. And this is the third year that we're bringing a Hispanic delegation to Davos. If you don't mind, just raise your hand, Hispanic delegation. People that are coming, willing to be, with an open door. Today we had the first ever press conference about Latinos in the history of the World Economic Forum after 51 years, because you have to be smart about how to plug it, but also persistent and not giving up. The first session in Latinos in Cannes after 61 years. So I do think that we have to, in a way, understand that it is true, it is unfair, but we have to bring on the solution so that you can start saying, if we're not at the table, let's bring a delegation and let's actually convince ourselves to be together and to show up and to do it in a way that actually is going to be able to be a win-win-win for everybody. And when it comes to the consumer power, look, the world is browner, more feminine, and with a bigger heart than ever before. And people are buying with their beliefs and voting with their hearts. And so brands have to, drink the Kool-Aid or have to drink the diversity and inclusion, and have to start looking at ways in which consumers are going to buy actually from companies where that are inclusive, where they can see, people like them inside and out. People are smart, and if you're gonna start looking, if you're gonna start looking at the power, the consumer power, at least in America, you mentioned 86%, 82% are women. The Latino consumer power, is $2 trillion. We have a power as consumers. We have a power as employees, but also let's actually make sure that we deliver to companies the solutions to understand how can they deliver to us. I think that we're very proud to have a brand, not only a framework called the Hispanic Promise that we launched today, but a brand called the Hispanic Star that ideally you as a consumer can choose between one shampoo and the other. That one that has the Hispanic Star means it's going to give to Latinos. And if we Latinos were not taking that choice, then we will be hurting ourselves. But I think that we have an incredible advantage where employees rule and consumer power is really at the gain. So.
Yeah, I love the idea of the consumer power leading to the power structure of an organization, the leadership of an organization. But sometimes that could create, that's one thing that it's considered a hurdle. If you're not spending money, then how can you control an organization? If we think about other hurdles, then Chandra, what do you think are some of the key hurdles for an organization or you to make sure we have more equitable and inclusive environments?
Sure. Thank you for that. I would say there are three. And the first one is that people aren't prepared and willing to tell the truth. Folks need to tell the truth about what agenda that they are really pursuing and whether or not they're recognizing the kind of information that Claudia is sharing. And so you need to get true. You need to get very honest with yourself and tell the truth about what your agenda is and what your intention is. Because I don't think, as people have said, there is a lack of talent. There's a lack of opportunity. The second thing that I would say, beyond telling the truth to yourself about yourself, is there's a lack of imagination. So I believe 100% in the power of imagination to change any circumstance in any situation. So we have to begin to believe again. One of the things that I mentioned Dr. King, and I think about him often because I don't know that people have dreamed since he passed away. And I don't know I'm pretty certain that was not his dream. So we need to cultivate and stoke our own individual imaginations to begin to consider what the world would be like if, in fact, women had an equal stake and an equal say, whether they had to bring their own table or their own chair or whatever, get some people to get up. We need to use our imagination, right, to create the change that we want to see. And I think thirdly, so there's tell the truth, there is cultivate an imagination, and then that is be about the action, right? There's no time like the present to do the right thing. And the right thing you have to know for yourself, without a doubt, is aligned with creating equity in this world for all people. Because you want all people to succeed. Why? Because that's how you succeed, right? We're not in this alone. The interdependency that we experience as a world, as a globe, has never been greater. It was amazing to sit with Indian women last night and to hear them share their stories and to identify so closely with their stories when they live around the world. To sit with a woman from Poland, to hear her story and identify so closely with that. We have never been closer to each other, but we will fail each other if we don't capitalize on the connection that is required in order to maximize the opportunity that that closeness presents. So tell the truth. Be about the business.
Okay. And don't talk about it, be about it. That's your last thing, right? So, yeah, go ahead. You were next on my list to tap into because I know you mentioned the intersectionality or the intersecting moments. Tell us about how do you gain opportunity to train and create systems within organizations? I know that's a big part of what you do. Tell us about that and how that fits into some of the things that Chandra kind of pointed out for us.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to add on to what you were saying, Chandra. I think we also need more curiosity and more empathy and respect towards the differences. And curiosity, I mean, let's listen to everyone's stories and be curious about it. Let's move towards that with empathy and with respect. And maybe we won't understand, but let's respect it. And that, it's already, for me, a huge step forward. And for that, we need courage. Because it's time to do things differently. Like, it was time a long time ago, but now really we need to have the courage to move and see things from different perspective. And that takes me to the intersectionality about it. I think I still go with a lot of the corporates I work with, and they still think that it's gender, or if it's just disability, or if it's just race or LGBT. And it's like, why can't we see the human being from the intersectional lens, which means we all have multiple identities. So now I joke with them and I go and say, so what happens when you have someone who is part of the disability program, but is also part of the genders, race? What are you going to do with that person, right? So I think it's that level of curiosity to see things differently because things have changed, and stop working in silos. It's about connecting the dots and saying, actually, it's going to be more efficient, much more efficient, better impact, and more innovation.
I think with that connecting piece of it, and education is a big part of it. If we look at the space of equity and inclusion and who it affects, I think top line we've been looking at DE&I from what's above this kind of ice. What do you call those? It's a big iceberg. Thank you. I was like, there's an ice thing in the water. Iceberg. That includes the obvious, right? But then there are underlying things under the surface, which deals with, the neurodiversity issues that we have, how we identify, internally, what's our individual identity. And so corporations have to find a way to educate within the organization, especially if we're moving forward. You lead an organization as a CEO, right, of Comic Relief. I think there's a stat that's 6.6 of the 6.6% of the CEOs of S&P 500 companies, women. We represent that 6.6%. That's a small number, really small. 50%, right? Okay, and we're 50% of the population. What are we doing in these positions to advocate more for women in these leadership positions, or then how to train leaders to groom the next set of leaders?
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's a lot of what you guys just spoke about, and I would put that down to culture building and creating and having a responsibility. And I think about this as a female leader, and I've been a leader I'm a CEO at Comic Relief, but I've been in major leadership roles in commercial organizations for 20 some odd years. And the commonality and my success was highly dependent on the success of the women that partnered with me and mentored me. And actually somebody brought this up to me the other day, sponsored me. In the, I'm going to say this male domain, there is a conversation around sponsoring somebody, this guy's good, how about putting him in this role? With women, it's more this mentoring. I think that needs to change. And we need to kind of think about my responsibility as a 53-year-old woman and at a C level, looking down at the generations below me who are working their ways up and recognizing the similarities we have versus the differences. I could sit here all day and talk about the differences of a 53-year-old woman and a 33-year-old woman. There's some things I'm like, whoa, all right. Yes.
Glad we're seasoned now,
Right,
right?
exactly. Yeah, right. That's how we're going to put it. But I think, keeping your eyes open and the conversation open and listening, right? And that's my responsibility to build a culture at the person at the top of this culture that's inclusive of women, young, with diverse experiences, historically included and historically excluded qualities in and of themselves. Back to your point, it's not one category that people represent. And I feel a benefit as a female CEO, frankly, that I have the empathy, the context, the sight, and the experience to build that culture in a different way than perhaps others who have not had that journey. And I am committed, and particularly because I'm at an organization that furthers the work for women in even marginalized populations, which is another layer of conversation. Women, children, and young people, historically marginalized populations that have been actually systematically suppressed. And so imagine what kind of opportunities have been kept off of their table. So when I think about that broadly and from where we sit in our organization, I think it is culture and it's a responsibility, and I take it very seriously. And I infuse that down in my leadership, who are women at the senior level too, and it's an expectation in the culture. And if it's not happening in the culture, I need to hear about it. Yeah. And I open that door to make sure I do.
You gave me a key word, which was hear about it, right? And there's certain ways we hear about things, we storytell about things. It comes through marketing, it comes through advertising, storytelling, creating messages for people to hear. I'm going to let you end with the storytelling of how we get the messaging out. I'm going to talk to a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, for Logitech, in a space where women, there's a tiny, tiny number of us in tech, but it's growing. How, as a Chief Marketing Officer, are you committed to storytelling and bringing more women into the tech business? And just, what are you doing from that standpoint? I was just like, what are you doing now, as you must be what are you doing?
Exactly. What are you doing? I think the key, obviously, around increasing any population, is intentionality. So, tech is just one of the many industries that lack diversity, whether we're talking women, especially even more challenging for women of color. So, the first thing I'd say is that I joined tech. So I stopped talking about it and became about it. I was not in tech. I'm not from tech. But I looked and say tech is going to transform the world, and if we're not there, not leading it, then how am I going to make a difference? And I looked at tech and I saw the intern programs and the opportunities, and we've never really changed corporations from the bottom. And so I'm going to work and get a senior job within tech so that I can be a leader and work to transform the industry that I believe is going to change the world. And because of that, people can't often be what they can't see. And so at least I could be a senior leader of diversity that someone could see and then know it was possible. And so I have to say that's why I chose it. But I didn't just get the job, right? I had to have a CEO who was working with intentionality to be able to not just see me how I see myself, which is someone who has skills and capabilities, but also see the opportunity of being able to have somebody who also reflects half the population and then some. And so I think that's really important for the industries that you might be talking about or thinking about or think that aren't there. You got to go for the senior job, and that's something we definitely can learn from our male colleagues. Yes. The second thing I would say is that being within technology, it is very much around the products that you make and create and who you make them for. And so I'm really honored at Logitech that we have an amazingly diverse group of engineers and product managers, group, quite frankly, across every function that is being very intentional to make products for the world, make products for women. We're working to change every industry that we're in. We make, video from anywhere, gaming from anywhere, learning and working. And so a good example would be within gaming, right? You might think about gaming as young and male and sometimes not diverse, but gaming has tremendously changed, right? Gaming is the #1 sport in the world these days, believe it or not. And women are representing an enormous amount of gamers, but yet the products were not reflective of us. And so we had a very diverse team of engineers, including several women, including our lead innovation officer, who designed products that reflect women and then other other groups of people who wanted the equipment to be more inclusive. And so we have that across all of our areas. But I think putting women in positions where they are creating, developing the technology to make sure it reflects the world is critically important as just two things within that. And then one I have to say, because I didn't talk about marketing as a woman, I forgot about myself. But I would say within marketing, it's making sure that as you see the advertising, that it reflects us. I definitely felt like I had the audacity to put Lizzo in our ad for Logitech. And I say audacity because you know that is not what you think of when you think of tech. But Lizzo is representative of the world. She does represent being able to be a global leader in many ways, who's going to redefine the way people see people who are in pop culture, whoever to be able to see women herself. And we are about defying logic and being able to change the game. And felt like I'm going to put somebody who is audacious enough to reflect that for herself to represent our brand. And I think when you have an opportunity to do better, please do it.
I'm not going to let you, she segued into the storytelling and the marketing of it. And this is giving you your opportunity to storytell and tell how you do it. And why is it so important for the representation in this part of the business?
Well, thank you. And it's humbling to end such an unbelievably articulate and beautiful panel. So thank you for sharing all your stories. But I will say, there's nothing more powerful in this world than a personal story. And it's something that everyone in this room has, right? I may not know how to code, but I can share a story with a young coder, with a senior coder, right? And I think, to me, that is really where the acorn of ideas begins and ends. And no one in any organization, large or small, wants to make bad decisions, right? That is what connects us. What connects us is wanting to succeed. We don't want to look dumb. We don't want to look stupid. So share the data. Share your personal story. That is a data point. Your story is a data point, and so is yours, and so is yours. And collectively, putting a human face on that data is something that we all can do. And we can carry that torch forward, and we can expand the conversation, and we can bang the pots, and we can get the white badges, and we can change Davos. So thank you for that.
think, yes, ladies, thank you so much for this conversation. I'll say, I'm always about being an outlier and changing from the outside. There's power in the fringe. There's power in this room. There's power in bringing your own table and breaking down doors, setting up a trail of, rainbow lights, bringing Hispanics, bringing Black people to Davos. We would rather it be in a sunnier place, but it's cold. But being able to do that and not ask for permission, that's how we affect change. Is we don't talk about it, we be about it. And I thank you all for coming to this panel. I think we are the new faces of Davos. So if you haven't taken a picture of us now and posted it, you should. And hashtag new faces of Davos. And Rupa, thank you so much.
Yes,
and join us in Cannes, June 19th to the 23rd at Inkwell Beach Can Diversity Collective. We will see you there. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Please take a picture of us. I was kind of serious about that.